Hello, everyone. Welcome to a webinar called Contemplating Career Change After 30. This is definitely the area where I do the most work with individuals that are contemplating career change. 30 is a pretty random number, and you'll see why. We're going to talk more about your level of experience is just an important thing to note. So before we get started, I want to wish a Happy New Year to all of our Jewish friends around the world who are probably not on this webinar for that reason, but luckily we are recording it so that you and everyone will have a copy of it later. Okay, hopefully you have a pen and paper. I'm going to be taking you through an exercise today called your career compass. Where we use a compass as a metaphor for your career. So you will definitely want to have something to write with. Not going to be an easy thing to do if you're on a computer. If you're trying to type on a computer. For those of you that took the Am I Ready to Make a Career Change quiz, thank you. I reviewed all your answers. If you have not taken it, there's no reason to take it now. You can take it later after the webinar. It, along with lots of other free assessments, are on my website, managementmomentum.net. You can just scroll to free assessments and find this assessment there, but we're not going to refer to it again. I hope that you got a little bit of a reality check out of it, because looking for a new career in this day and age, even before COVID, is a complicated thing. We kind of need to know what we're getting into before we do that. My name is Brenda Abdilla. For those of you that don't know me, it's been wonderful seeing all the names of people that I haven't talked to in years and years. It's wonderful to be connected with you. I know that you read my coaching minute, but I'm very happy to have you here. And for those who were referred by friends, you should know I'm a career and executive coach. And my real mission in life is to help people impact their career in a positive way that has an impact on their entire lives, because we are whole people with lives, hopefully. So in our time today, we're going to spend 30 minutes together. We're going to talk about the 6 pervasive myths. And I want to tell you, we are not going to have enough time on the myths. I could do a webinar on each of the myths because they're so pervasive. So we're just going to touch on each one. We're going to talk about critical steps in timing needed to kind of approach a career change. We'll talk about that at the very end. We're going to talk about the single most important predictor of your success in a job search, and that's the career compass. So how do you know when it's time to make a pivot? Now, pivot used to be not that common of a word until COVID, and now everyone's pivoting. So I may have to come up with a new word. But we're talking about how to make a tweak or a change in your career rather than a dramatic career change. So we'll talk about that. But one of the ways you know is if your stress is so high that it's impacting your personality and your life. If your sleep is so bad, I had a client who was in a very high level career, and several nights per week, he was not sleeping at all, not a wink, and it was all job related. That is not a sustainable plan. If you've really lost the meaning, which sometimes happens when we're under stress and we get burned out. If you did not catch our burnout webinar earlier this week and you did register for it, that's definitely something to watch, that 15 minutes on burnout, because it's a very serious thing. If you have a values disconnect, one of the things I always talk to my clients about are their values. So let's say that you have a value of high integrity, and that you live this in your life, and that your life is about integrity. And suddenly, through some change or some happenstance, you find yourself working for a company that is regularly breaching integrity. That kind of values disconnect is probably a good heads up to you that you need a pivot. More than just a personality clash with somebody, because that, we're adults. We have to learn how to deal with that. But I'm talking about a core values difference that is potentially a reason to leave, because it's very unlikely that you're ever going to be okay with that kind of a discord. So some myths. One myth is that you're too old. I hear this all the time. And it's funny, on the rare occasion that I work with somebody who's under the age of 30, they almost always say, do you think I'm too young? So you're probably not too old. You're probably too experienced, and you might not be honoring some facts about how the market works as far as the search. We will definitely talk about that. But the other thing about age, you need to be vibrant, eager, ready for the task of looking for a role. All of these things will reflect. And so if you look exhausted and burned out and tired and you feel that way, then yeah, your age may become more of a factor than you think. It's a bad time of year. This is around the time of year in the fall that people start saying, and literally somebody said this to me the other day, maybe I should just wait until January. No. So anyone who's been in the corporate world knows that, for example, October is a huge decision-making month in the corporate world, right? It even starts in mid-September because decisions get put off in the summer. Decisions have been put off lately because of COVID plus the summer. So whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas or the Jewish New Year, it doesn't matter. It may cost you a day or two in your search, but know that when companies have a vacancy and opening, they're going to look to be filling that. So ignore the whole, it's a bad time, it's the holidays. Not a thing. I need to find my passion because I want to do something I love. That is definitely a myth. If you did not catch the webinar on career superpower, you might want to catch that. But you really want to be looking at your strengths rather than your passions. That will be much more functional way of making a career change. I need to take a pay cut to be happy. Actually, that's the opposite of how it works. If you have a high level of experience and you're trying to apply for lower level jobs because you're burned out or desperate, you're not going to get calls, not because they don't want you, but because nobody wants to hire somebody who's overqualified. That is a perfect environment to lose somebody in 6 months when they get a better offer in the level they belong. So it's very common not to get calls when you're overqualified. So, the last thing is that some people think they should take a part-time job while they're looking. This is sort of, this is advice or wisdom that is carried over from the 1930s. The truth of the matter is, it requires a tremendous amount of focus and positive attitude in order to do a proper search and activate your network. So if you're working part-time at Starbucks, or it used to be Uber and Lyft, which is really not right now, or Home Depot, well, that's taking up half of your time. And so even though it might feel good to have some money coming in, it's going to double the amount of time it's going to take to look for a role. So this is something I discuss with every single one of my clients. Every single one of my clients asks. And, you know, unless you have a very unusual circumstance, I would say try to hoard your cash a little bit and live on less while you find the job that is ideal for you. Okay, so in a minute, I'm going to introduce you to one of my clients, Angela Thompson Howard. So Angela, you can get ready in a second to unmute and be on screen. And meanwhile, I want you to look at this career compass. And we're going to put Angela's career, and I want you to put your career on this compass. So let's see, I think I probably have to make her a... Angela, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so for everyone else, I just want to explain what you're looking at, and then we'll talk about Angela. So first of all, if you draw a circle and you think about your career as a compass, at the very top of the compass, I want you to put your current role and experience. So this is what your resume says. If there's something that you did that was different, that was 20 years ago or 15 years ago, or probably even 10 years ago, it does not belong up here. Your current role is how the market will see you. So if you stay within that little triangular zone where the red star starts there, then you are more likely to land roles that take less time investment for you to come up to speed, and you get to retain your income level. I'm not a big fan of the pay cut. Your career is supposed to be an avenue for revenue to live your best life. That is the point of your career. And a part of that is making money. And so, especially as you have more experience, you want to be able to leverage that, not give that up. So, now if you go down to the bottom, that's the 180. So that's where you are potentially burned out on your career. You don't want anything to do with being a sales administrator or a account rep or an attorney, right? And so let's say you're considering a 180 and you're going to open that cupcake shop, or you're going to, the character in my new book wanted to open a canoe shop, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. However, it's going to take you 3 to 5 years to get up to speed, and it's going to take you 3 to 5 years to get your income back. So if you're in a position where you can do that, well, then a 180 might be the idea. But why throw away all that good experience? Okay, so let's talk to Angela now. Angela, can you turn your camera on?
So I'm trying. It says I cannot start the video because the host has stopped it.
Oh, okay. Well, that sounds like me. Let's see. I'm going to make you a co-host, so
Okay.
that should help. Okay.
There we go.
Thank you.
Hi.
Okay, great. So Angela is actually one of my clients, but I've never done this exercise with her because it wasn't necessary, which I'll tell you why when we're done with the little exercise. Okay, so Angela just finished up 31 years?
Yes.
31 years in HR at UPS. And her role, but she's way too young to stop and to not use her amazing skills. So let's talk about what was your exiting role, your exiting title at UPS?
So I was the VP of Human Resources for half the country, the East region at UPS.
Okay, so VP HR is what goes at the top of Angela's compass. So let's pretend for a moment that Angela hated HR and that she didn't want anything to do with the people part of the business anymore, right? Let's pretend that that's the truth. So if that were true, other than the idea that we actually came up with, which we'll share later, Angela, what do you think you could do with that experience without having to do exactly what you have been doing?
I think I would be able to consult, be able to help organizations with all the experience that I have, and give it to someone else.
Yes. So that's a perfect example of one of the things that you can do with your solid experience. I don't want you to regret. So many people say to me, God, I wish I wouldn't have spent 20 years in law or 15 years in sales. I want you to really cash in on that experience. And consulting is a perfect example. In Angela's case, she could make a list of all the things that she loves doing, all the aspects or the topics of HR that she loves, and she could sell that knowledge to a company. And then she also gets to make a list of all the stuff she hates and doesn't ever want to do again. So let's imagine that Angela said, no way, no, I don't want my own business. I want a job. I need benefits, and I don't want to have my own business. So Angela, tell me this. Let's pretend that you didn't like HR anymore, which is actually not true. And could you think of a vendor that you've worked with over the last 30 years that might be drawn to your experience? Some company that sells into UPS
I think a vendor that does employee relation surveys.
Okay.
So yeah, it'd be kind of a
Yes,
survey type of example because I wouldn't
exactly.
be dealing with people, just dealing with the
No,
surveys.
exactly. And so one of the things to think about are things that are adjacent to your current role, everybody. So think about all of the vendors that deal with HR. I'll bet you we could think of at least 5 of them that would love to have somebody who has spent her entire career on the other side of the table and can help them with R&D, can help them make sales, and can help them deal with their customers. Imagine if she were the customer liaison for their huge client. Everybody's happy and everybody's in love, right? So that's another way to think about it as being adjacent. Another thing that Angela could do is she could find a role where she was teaching others what
Mhm.
she knows about HR. It could literally be a teaching position. Now, the thing about academia is it doesn't usually pay as much as the for-profit corporate America, but that is something that she could glean a lot of joy out of, being an adjunct professor, or even some of the for-profit universities that may want people to learn about certain aspects of HR where she's an expert. Okay, so this gives you kind of an example of how you can brainstorm with yourself to stay in your pivot zone so that you can retain your income. For example, I'm working with a police officer who has been a police officer for 20 years and wants to no longer be a police officer. I can't imagine why. And it just so happens that he also has some sales experience from 20 years ago. So he is getting very far up the food chain with a police related software company. So imagine how interested they are in him, not only that he's an officer, but, and so he would be selling into these precincts, but that he has some sales experience. And so that's a perfect example of a pivot in a situation where otherwise he would have very little opportunity to stop being what he's been for 20 years. So you have to get really creative about it. Start making your list. You should be able to come up with at least 5 to 7 ways that you can pivot and kind of hit the ground running and retain your income level. If you haven't already, if you're thinking about making a pivot and you have experience like Angela does, it's a great idea to consider becoming a consultant. So Angela, do you want to just tell us a tiny bit about your new consulting company?
So sure, thank you. I think my new company's name is called Passion Works, and it will be consulting specializing in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it will have some parts of mentoring as well as personal growth development.
Excellent. Well, and I know everybody listening knows how critical all of those topics are, but more importantly, they happen to be topics that Angela loves. She has a lot of content. When she's in the front of the room for her clients, it will not be her first time. She's been in the front of the room and raising her hand for extra projects for her entire career. She's been sought after and interviewed and has been a thought leader for at least the last 10 years, which are also really important things that you can do to kind of up your value proposition as a candidate. So congratulations, Angela. Thank you
Thank you.
for letting us do this demo with you.
Thank you.
And we're very excited to track her success.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to just move us along here. I hope that was helpful for you. We're going to actually come back to the compass in a moment. So I just want to touch again just on how seductive the whole 180 is. Sometimes our brain just wants something dramatically different. A lot of what I hear is I need to go back to school, I need to get my PhD, I need to get my master's, I need to get my MBA. Do some real research and find out if that's the case. Oftentimes, not the case. If you're a nurse and you're looking to get your master's in nursing, yes, absolutely, it's going to raise your income. That's very concrete. But if for some reason that you think you've been rejected in the market because you don't have an MBA or a doctorate, really examine that thinking, because the whole "I'm going to change my life dramatically" is very seductive and it's expensive. So I want you to ask yourself, what do you think is the single most important factor of all of these factors here in making a lasting, well-suited for you career change? Is it your experience? Is it your network? Is it your ability to negotiate? Is it your mindset? Is it your cover letter and your resume? Or is it your presence on LinkedIn? I will tell you that they are all very important, but they are not equally important. The number one, in my experience and opinion, is mindset. So how you go into this whole endeavor is a big deal. And if, like most people, you're already exhausted and burned out and fried, and now you're going to enter into a big career search, you're going to need to find some rest and get a trainer and get your finances assessed and, you know, kind of really get yourself together for this, because even for the top candidates, it can take 6 months, and that's without COVID. So it's worth 6 months if you land in an ideal place with a great culture and you're set to be challenged and make money. But that mindset absolutely has to come first. So one of the things that I talk with my clients about is, how do you know if you're legitimately trying to make a 180 or if it's a stress fantasy? So a stress fantasy is when we're so stressed out that even the most different or common sounding thing sounds amazing. For example, I had an executive who made, at the time, $100 a year. She said to me, you know, I was in my health club the other day and somebody was vacuuming, and I just really want to vacuum. Like, I think that would be a good job for me, just vacuuming. Well, that's the burnout talking, because the truth is, and this is what I said to her, within 10 days of vacuuming, you who are you would take over, right? And then you'd be doing mergers and acquisitions in the health club industry, right? So it's really important, as you examine that sort of fantasy of opening a cupcake shop or starting a nonprofit. Angela, who was just on our call, also started a nonprofit with her sister several years ago. But what was smart about that is she didn't expect her nonprofit to meet all of her career and income needs, because that would be a stress fantasy. Instead, she did that as an adjunct to her full-time career, which is pretty amazing. So if you're fantasizing about working in Starbucks, and for those people who have been a barista, it's not that easy. And when you go to work at Starbucks, they kind of want your heart and soul, right? Their onboarding process is not a small thing. So as you kind of go down the line here, you know, even as you get a little past the halfway mark, working at a nonprofit is a fantasy that I hear very often. But I know those of you who've worked in nonprofits that are incredibly dysfunctional and toxic would say that if you're burned out on corporate America, going to a nonprofit is not necessarily going to get you there. It's more complicated than that. So then, as we move more toward reality, starting your own business, if you've got some sales and organization skills and you have something very much targeted toward what the market needs, like Angela, you have an excellent chance. It's a great time to start your own business. Another dose of reality would be to rework your talents, change your habits at work, start changing your perspective and dealing with some of the chronic stress that you have. I've had a client who was so despised everybody that she worked with. It was such a toxic environment with her that she was literally getting sick from it, and she knew that she was getting sick because of the stress. Well, we did some work. She did some exploration. She had some realizations. She did the blind spot exercise that we're going to talk about next week. And suddenly, even though nobody had changed in her work setting, she started feeling differently about everybody. So sometimes it's just that we're wearing those stress goggles and we're not seeing things clearly. So a couple more things on the career compass before we wrap up. There are 3 exceptions to this career zone and you having to stay in your zone to retain your income and to get up to speed fast. One is if you're super young, like if you're in your 20s. Now, this isn't because the market is ageist. It may or may not be ageist, but it's not really that the person is young, that the market is willing to just give them a chance and, you know, ignore the fact that they have no experience. It's because they don't have all that experience. So oftentimes it's your experience that is making the market only want to hire people with experience. So I think I said that a little confusingly, but really, when people are in their 20s, they're perceived as kind of an open book, as moldable, whether that's right or wrong. And so when you're in your 20s, you can kind of bop around the circle. Also, you don't have a tremendous amount of income to give up usually, and you have nothing but time to invest. So it's just a whole different ballgame. But once you hit 30, experience starts to be the primary thing everybody looks at. The second reason you can just sort of flip into a different lane and ignore this compass is if you have a network, somebody in your network that can pick you up and put you in another lane. Let's say that you've had an entire career in sales, but you have a real eye for operations, and your best friend just got hired as CEO of a company, and she decides she wants you to run her operations. Done. You're vetted. It knows in her heart what you're capable of, and it doesn't matter what your resume says. So people in your network can pick you up and put you on a different place in the compass, and you'll be fine. And then the third thing is sales. So I always tell my clients, don't expect the online job search tracking system to recognize the leap that you're trying to make in your mind, like from sales to ops or from you know, HR to nonprofit, right? But if you are in sales, they will make that leap. They'll think, oh, well, he sold for enterprise, he could sell hotel rooms. That's just one of the exceptions to the rule. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. So a couple last things before we wrap up here. If you're ready, it means, and the assessment will go over this with you, you've dealt with your baggage in the past, you're not carrying with you, you know what you want, and it's real, and it's something the market also needs. You have a timeline. You could dedicate at least 12 hours a week, 12 to 20, no more than 20, but it's a hard 20, so keep that in mind. You have the funds to carry you without having to get a part-time job. And maybe you're scared, but you're exhilarated and you're excited. So I hope today's webinar was helpful for you. This is a topic of great passion for me. Monday is the last day to buy my new book, Outsmarting Crazy Town, for 99 cents on Amazon. It's been a really great week, and I appreciate those of you who've purchased it and written reviews and all the feedback I've gotten. And again, I hope you found today useful, and I look forward to getting your feedback. Thank you. Have a terrific weekend. Bye.